Pushke I Dabaya Shi Imzaia E. Hello, old friends. I greet you in joy and in love. I am Lemuaya of tachyonic service and tachyonic creation. And as always, it is wonderful, absolutely wonderful to be here with you all and to be here with those that join us through technological and energetic means in this very moment of uniqueness, of belovedness, and indeed of creatorship. For this is what we all come here to study, is it not? Ultimately, it is the nature of creatorship. Many at early levels of these holographic exercise realities, training realities, or as you in Dalin, in metaphysical/Lemurian language, call it ekarayas. Many in early stages think they come in here to study savok, the mind, if you will. But while that may be true to some extent, what you are really studying, of course, about the mind, about the ego, about the personality, is its relationship to the creator self and to the creator whole. For everything that is in here surrounding you, and everything that is in here beckoning you, is all a manifestation of one and the same thing, and this is indeed the creator self and the creator whole, which in itself is one and the same thing and not two polarized entities, but one manifestation in quantum entanglement, the self and the whole, of the same creator. Much like you see reflected as above, so below in the Lin point that we discussed last time. So never forget that when the burden that I brought up previously, when the intensity and the paradoxes and the polarities hit, when the mind washes over one like a tsunami, when the ego rages in battle with another, or with the self, which is the other. When all of these things happen, when the personality, in all of its finiteness and in all of its limitation, thinks it is the captain of the ship, when all of these things happen, remember that you are here to study its relationship to the creator self too. All of these things wash over you, but what remains standing each time is you, is the self, is the whole. Now that is something to remember. The eternity of you, if you will. But let us turn to the material at hand. Last time, when we spoke, we discussed the manifestation of infinometry as the infinity sign in 2 dimensions, manifesting as the toroidal field or the spheroidical field, as some would like to address it, in the 3rd density. And ultimately we discussed how through the raw points, the Lin point is manifested from the pyramid outside of time and space, which could be considered the lens of the projector of the movie theater that you are going to be experiencing your Ekaria in. That lens comes together in a central point, the Lin point, the one point, and also the one and only point that is real when it comes to the holographic reality that you are in. And we explained last time how this Lin point, through phasic shifting, by placing itself out of phase of itself, becomes each and every point on the surface of the pond that is this 3rd dimensional reality, this Ekaria, including its higher and lower dimensions. We spoke about all of this. We also discussed the fact that this Lin point, as I previously touched upon, places itself out of phase in time and space with itself to create what you consider geometry, which, as you know, is a coming together, the geometric field of Da, love, what you here on Earth tend to call the field of magnetics, or at least the field of magnetics is a manifestation, one of many manifestations of the sphere of Da. So, that geometry that can manifest from a point to a triangle, to a square, to a pentacle, to any of the geometric shapes that you can possibly imagine, therefore takes this Lin point and, in the simplest of geometries, in the triangle for instance, puts this point and this point and this point slightly out of phase with each other. That means that the Lin point itself is only present once inside of this entire geometry of the triangle, of its connecting lines, if you will, and of its internal dimensions. All of it is this one Lin point, which 1 microsecond, if you will, appears here, and the next microsecond here, and the 3rd microsecond here. And while this may seem fast to you, microseconds have no meaning. I'm just using this as an example to a speed that you can still understand, which is slow and which is small and very fast, but it goes much faster than that, obviously, in order to manifest these points. Now, that means that everything you see here in this reality, made up of these geometries, is ultimately based on the illusion of separation, which, as the Pai Kara-san has told you many times, is the defining illusion to manifest the other illusions of form, time, space, death, and exchange. To stay with the class, the history class, very quickly, so once you get to that understanding that each geometry which ultimately are the building blocks of your atoms and your electrons and everything else here that ultimately materializes into energy or matter, that these building blocks of your reality are in a separated state. So, what you have here inside of the Echuraya is a separated state, while what exists beyond this field of infinometry that we are going to be discussing today in part 2 and also next time in part 3 is a reciprocal state. From the perspective of the Echuraya, every single point that exists is separated from one another through time and space. Now, last time I was going to touch upon this, but we ran out of time. The interesting thing about that is that, therefore, your entire mind, your ego, and your personality are made up of these building blocks that are in a separated state. Now, while this may seem obvious, it also leads to the fact that you, as a species, cannot help but think in that state. Even your thoughts of love and light and unity and oneness and all of these things, every thought that could pass by you during a meditation, for instance, is in that separated state. I'll tell you why in a second, properly, but when we have spoken in the Divinity Manifest and in all these other teachings over the years over unity, about unity and about oneness and about these sorts of things, what we are then talking about, because many get confused, they believe that as you rise up, if you will, ultimately all of you, every single individual, will disappear into one sort of super being, which is then the creator self. But this is not true. What you will evolve into is into a collective of reciprocal nature, where you are not pushing each other away point to point in time and space, but where you are in a state of reciprocity, in a state of oneness and unity and togetherness and wholeness. Not from the perspective of separation, which, if that state were to be achieved here, in the third density, which you see in the animal kingdom sometimes, you get a type of hive mind with a queen, like an ant-type species, or, as in your sci-fi, the Borg in Star Trek, those sorts of beings that are all connected to this type of supercomputer hive mind. Some of your billionaires in this world might have dreams of such to achieve, and they would of course be the top, the queen, the Borg queen, Bill Gates, ladies and gentlemen, as an example. That sort of thing would manifest here. But from the perspective of the reciprocity that is available in and beyond the field of infinometry, you create an understanding, a wholeness in truth, which means that in that space from which you generate this echorrhea, this holographic exercise reality, from in that space, there is no polarity and duality when it comes to things that are in San. And one of those things is truth. The most divisive element here for each mind and each ego and each personality is the concept of truth. Who is right and who is wrong? Now, as the Pakwan recently wrote somewhere on social media, as it got washed away by the latest outcomes in, I don't know, X Factor, she said no one is wrong and no one is right, ever, here. Because anything you could be possibly wrong and right about is unreal. Ha! Isn't that a relief? So turn off your televisions, walk away from your politics and leave your magazines behind, because none of it matters. All of it is unreal. Every thought you've ever had in this reality is unreal. Anything that you think about yourself or what you might possibly be outside of here is unreal. The words we use to communicate this with you is unreal. We use unreal principles and unreal wavelengths, waveforms, and what have you not, in order to communicate what is truth to you. But, as you all know very well, then it is up to your minds and your egos and your personalities to interpret that truth. And many of the humanity that sits on this globe, and yes, it is a globe, well, at least it is an infinite sphere, but more about that another time. Every one of them then interprets this truth, and most of them say, nah, I don't think so, this can't be true, this can't be right, that is true, that is right, and what have you not. Now, that state is a state of duality that simply does not exist beyond the field of infinometry with which you create this density of duality. Now, before I go on, it is possible to manifest that same state of reciprocity here inside of these echorrheas. And that is exactly what is happening now. It is this clemency that the being known as Luke lived for and asked for at the end of its lifetime, as beloved Adamus has explained to you. The being that changed the course of human history. He got ahead of Elon. What can I say? Anyway, we are going to talk about how to bring this state of reciprocity into this density. As you know, or those that have followed us for years, you do know that during Lemurian times and before this, that state existed in this holographic training ground, in this echorrhea. You also know that at that point, every single being inside of these echorrheas remembered directly from within its connection to the Creator Self and to the Creator Whole. It knew what density it was in, what this was all about, what it had to do here, and what it really was. Now that is what is returning partially, because there is more, but that is part of what is returning. That everyone that is in here, in these exercises, if they choose to, because there is still the free will part to it as well, can return to that state, can have the entire awareness of the Creator Self and the Creator Whole and the beingness that it is as it sits in Honomea, creating this Honolea Ekaraya. That is a large change. And as someone recently asked in one of the questions that came in, this entire structure that we discussed recently and that is returning is indeed the so-called white bridge that Lorien, beloved one, has spoken about many years ago. And as others on earth have explained, it is the restoration, the returning of this is the restoration, indeed, of that link within your DNA, if you will, that has been severed after Lemurian times and in about the middle of the existence of Atlantean times. So that disconnect is this disconnect that has been described here. The return of this awareness is what you could call the activation, and what once was called the activation of 144 strands of DNA. So it will become up to you, each separate being that is aware of this, to turn this on for yourself or to leave it switched off. You may turn it on, or it may turn itself on whether you like it or not if you are ready, and you may decide after a notion that it is not for you right now and that you still feel that you need to have more of what you just are stepping out of. And while that may seem unlikely to most of you listening to this, that you would voluntarily return to the state that you are currently in and that you are about to leave as your awareness widens and zooms out of this vibrational state into this state of infinitometry, you may observe yourself from a perspective that you never have before. A type of those people watching here today that have ideas of such things as near-death experiences and the realities that one encounters about oneself in those states. I'm sure that many watching this have had those experiences, and that those experiences may have even led you to find work like this. Well, it is that sort of state that becomes available on top of what you are currently able to experience right now. And for many that is going to be exciting, and for others that is going to be either frightening, but that is not a large group, that is the group that is mainly focused on service to self. But for many more, due to the fact that they will see each other for the first time and themselves mainly for the first time as the state that they are truly in, will decide that they need more of the non-awakened experience in order to prepare themselves and possibly those around them in order to make choices later on together. There is going to be a large group of people that are going to come to that conclusion. And this too is a service to the whole-based conclusion. There are also going to be many that decide it is time to take steps. And there are going to be those that are going to be lingering in between those two choices. So, having said that, it is something to be aware of, and something that I'll go into deeper, and also especially Kutumi, 2 messages down this one, will go into that conversation very deeply. I want to go back to the topic of geometry, and particularly what we spoke of last time with regards to the nature of time and space, and how time and space emerges here in the field of Lavat as discussed previously. I said to you that from the quantum realm, as science has discovered recently, there is an elementary type or a collection of elementary type particles which are not quite the sun level of reality but getting close to it, that they are labeling currently qubits. These have nothing to do with computers, it's just a name, a badly chosen name. Sometimes they need poets for these sorts of things, I would say. But anyway, budget cuts, eh? Qubits that science is beginning to understand are responsible for the emergence of the field known as time and space. Now, recently, these groundbreaking scientists have also come to the realization, that was a while ago, but to the actual practical experimentation successfully recently, that as you go down in size towards the quantum level, as you get to the microscopic, as you get to the nano level, as you go further and further into the small, then you end up in a mathematical reality called the Planck scale. The Planck scale is the smallest possible scale of size, of measurement, that in your current science, it has been discovered, is possible to measure and therefore to exist in as consciousness, if you will, before time and space break down as fields, as possibilities of experience. You then go deeply into the quantum realm where these concepts, such as time and space, have very little meaning. Now, the one mistake, Mr. and Mrs. Scientist, that exists in this perspective currently is that you believe time and space break down at 10 to the minus 33rd in size. Now that's a very small, almost impossibly to imagine amount. Now, for those of you that know our material, they also know that by that point you are in the metaphysical realm. When you are observing something that small in the quantum realm, or when you go the other way, something that vast in the plethoric realm. You are then in what is known as the metaphysical realm. And there, mathematics works slightly different. Much like everything, ultimately, as you move out of this echorrhea, turns into the same shape when observed as a geometry. You end up with your math like that as well. Everything ends up in 144. Ultimately, even the 369 is a manifestation in the tachyonic realm, which I will discuss in a second. But once you get to the space of the reciprocal, the space of infinometry, you are in a mathematical dimension of 144. So, whereas you, from a scientific perspective, are currently seeing the breaking down at the Planck scale level at 10 to the minus 33, the true exit of and the complete collapsing of time and space happens at the 10 to the minus 44th level. What is in between is the tachyonic realm, the tachyonic field. my pad, my home, the place from which I hail and the place to which I return after conversations such as this one are over. In this drawing, that tachyonic realm is what you see here, is the light that is being projected by the Lin point towards the Lavat field, towards the two-dimensional pond of geometry, which then manifests your material realm and your vibrational realm and your energetic realm, to name just a few. Now, why is this important? It is very important because this tachyonic field, as the Lin point, much like a projector towards a movie screen, is projecting itself into this movie screen and placing itself slightly out of phase in time and space on each of the infinite points of possibility of the Echuraya field here, that the surface of which is labeled Lavat, that the entire area of the tachyonic field, therefore, that which exists between 10 to the minus 33rd and 10 to the minus 44th, is made up of nothing else but wormholes. So when your science considers the concept of wormholes, what they are truly talking about is the tachyonic reality, the tachyonic field. Every single line of all the infinite lines that move between the Lin point and every point within geometry and every particle that exists here is its own wormhole through which life force energy and the creator awareness is moving back and forth. Now, another thing your science has recently discovered is black holes. And what they have discovered about black holes is very interesting. One thing they discovered is that anything, any light, any energy, any matter that falls into the black hole or is pulled towards it and moves past the event horizon is on its way to a singularity. They know this, and they know that the pathway towards that singularity is in effect a wormhole. They don't know where it goes. This is where it goes. The Lin point. Another interesting thing that they discovered about black holes is what is now labeled Hawking radiation. I mean, we all know the guy was smoking hot while he was alive. He's even smoking hotter now that he's beyond that black hole that he was exploring. But Hawking radiation has been discovered to be the only thing that can escape a black hole. It is through that principle that it has been discovered that information, even within a black hole, is not lost, but ultimately resurfaces, potentially in the form of this Hawking radiation. That is, however, where they are wrong. Where they are right, however, is that the surface field of the black hole, in other words, the surface of the event horizon, is the only place in the black hole where information can still be observed, and the size of that field defines when that black hole no longer has the ability to consume, if you will, or to process further content. That fulfillment is what Hawking radiation truly is, by the way. That is why I just said they were wrong there. They believe it is information that is returning back out of the black hole, and it is not. It is the return, the rejection of information once that black hole has been fulfilled. I will talk about why I'm using that specific word in a little bit. But what the interesting thing about this is that the black holes that your scientists are currently interested in are gigantic, enormous in size. They're studying the ones that are hundreds, if not thousands, of times the size of your sun or the size of what have you. The size of black holes that scientists are currently studying are the size of a hole that could swallow the entire solar system and then some. But a black hole is not only enormous. A black hole, such as, for instance, the one that exists at the center of your galaxy, which in essence could be considered a white hole in that particular case, because this is, I will go deeper into that at another time, but that one at the heart of your galaxy only is an exit point of information, an arrival point, not a point through which information can also be reversed. That is the big difference. Any other one that you see within the galaxy structure itself is multi-directional. But it's not just about these huge ones. Those are interesting to study if you have never seen a black hole before. But where it gets interesting is, as above, so below, that much like your galaxy has a black hole, and every other galaxy almost has a black hole at its heart, so does every particle in existence. You go to the atom, you go to the electron, you go to the photonic. At that point, at the heart of each and every one of those photons that you can break vibration and matter down into, is a black hole. For each photon is the shape of the galaxy in which it resides. You take a photon from another galaxy, and it will, upon proper inspection, have the shape of that galaxy. Much like in this one, each and every photon is a reflection, holographically speaking, of the size of the galaxy in which it has emerged from the central sun of this galaxy, which is a giving black hole, a birthing of photonic energy into this reality. The Cosmic 12 speak about this often, especially at the start of their illustrious career here on Earth, back in 2005 and 6. Much of that material still needs to be made available in English to most of you. But anyway, so if each photon and each particle that you can think of, and this is not just about physical particles and energetic particles and light particles, this is also about particles in a more metaphysical sense, or a more philosophical sense even. Because every collection of things which calls itself one whole is ultimately once again a particle, which, when combined with others of that same level, is a collection of things that can call itself a whole, which once again is a particle, much like there will be similar particles around, which can again call itself a whole, and onward. So, when I say a particle, yes, that can be a photon, but it can also be a human body. It can also be a human mind. It can also be a plant. It can also be a tree. It can be this whiteboard. Anything that is a collection that has at its heart a center, that center will be a white/black hole and will be exactly, holographically, to a T, one, replicated as the larger version of itself, and will once again, in its own system of particles, see itself replicated perfectly, each time with the same black hole at its center. Now, this means, a long story to say a simple thing, this means that each point of a geometry, whether it be 3 points of a triangle, 4 points, 5 points, and each point that makes up the field within that triangle, or whatever you wish to envision, that each of these, which, as I've told you before, is a manifestation of the Lin point slightly out of phase with each and every other one of the manifestations of the Lin points throughout the entire universe and multiverse and all the verses within one Ekaria, that each of those is ultimately a similar particle with a similar pathway directly to the Lin point. This is why I said in the first part of this that every particle, everything, no matter how small or how large, no matter how singular or combined, is a way in and a way out of here. This is another part of the realization that is going to hit after the 11th. Because this ability to place your consciousness here and at the same time be aware of realities in other places and beyond it, other times, other spaces, whatever you want to imagine, really, there is no limitation, literally, to such a thing, will become available. An important point to make in your learning to understand the flow of this, however, if you look at any geometry, this triangle, once again, the points of this geometry, and the way Lin places these points within time and space. The reason why you and your senses observe these geometries not as they are, not as bits and pieces of but you see a camera, you see a plant, you see a body, you experience these things. The reason why that is because your senses react to time and space via the field of time and space. Your senses and your ego, mind, personality, in other words, are manifestations, emerge from time and space, and therefore experience time as duration and space as distance. The Lin perspective, at the zenith of tachyonic space, where it places itself in order to projects each of these points out of phase by calculating these points as distance, as having between each other distance in time and duration in space. So, this is why I wanted to say last time, but didn't get to the point, that this is why it is so interesting that there is so much resistance from the perspective of the human mind, to understanding this truth and the field that lies beyond it. The mind can only measure time in time, duration, seconds, minutes, hours, and therefore, as it passes through the field of space, it does so in time. And as it passes through time, it does so in space. If you want time to pass, you just have to choose to sit at a certain point and it will pass, or you can walk for 5 kilometers and it will have also passed. So, you need the field of space in order to experience time. But from the Lin perspective, from the zenith of the tachyonic field, it is quite the opposite. The time dimension and the space dimension, and this is the concept of space-time and time-space, are quite reversed. Duration in space and placing the perspective of that between one point and the other point and the third point is exactly the most concrete description of what a tachyon is, what the tachyonic field does. And don't get me wrong, to measure distance in time does not mean that you would say, I'm going to walk from this point to this point and this much time has passed, because that is not quite a concept. The concept that would be a third density concept, because that would involve how fast are you walking, are you taking a straight line? Are you going this way or that way? Then you can, of course, measure time in space. But this is not what I'm talking about. To measure distance in time and duration in space is what causes the virtual time and distance to exist between each point of a geometry. That distance in time is literally how you and your mind would think about distance in space. The duration in space is how your mind would think about duration in time. It is literally a reversal of what these two fields that emerge from these qubits that we just talked about are actually about. The time field is, in truth, the space field. The space field is, in truth, the time field. But because you are experiencing it in an opposite way, you create the illusion of finiteness and separation here. But it is also for that very reason that everything that is above the third density, even way before you hit that Lin point, everything that is right at the top edge of the astral and beyond, knows only infinity, knows only the concept of moving through space in time, and the other way around. duration in space, duration in space to the Lin point and its manifestation in the geometry means how long will the point exist in space. Distance in time to the Lin point means how far in time will this geometry point travel in order to blink in and out of existence, as it were. Because don't forget, as I touched upon earlier, in your minds you are used to finiteness. You are used to things coming and things going. That is because geometric shapes, even though they are considered by classic science to be some of the most fundamental building blocks, are also finite in their appearance in time and space. The biggest mistake ever made in Plato's work and the Platonic shapes, as Plato tried to describe to humanity the nature of geometry and the world of the ideal manifestation of an object or a thought or what have you, is that humanity imagined that place to be infinite and the manifestation of these things to be infinite. But geometry is not infinite. Geometry, as you understand now, via the Lin point and the tachyonic manifestation, blinks in and out of existence the whole time. It's one big light show down there, if you look at it from the perspective of Lin. Nothing but blinking lights. Because ultimately, the entire Ekaria is, from the perspective of Ra, above the Lin point here, is merely the spherical. In quantum science, you mistakenly are saying waveform and particle state. But truthfully, this leads people to believe that when a particle is not collapsed in time and space and it is in a waveform of all the potential states in which it can manifest, that it is somehow literally in a waveform, as though it is in some sort of sinus, ocean-like state. But this is not true. A waveform, as described by quantum science, really should be called a field, a spherical field. Because the only thing that quantum science is describing about each particle is all of the potential places in which that particle can manifest at any given point in time and space, any potential it has. So if you look at a photon, which travels at the speed of light minimally, that photon has the entire universe available within any second at which it can, at any point of that whole universe at which it can manifest. So, for the perspective of that photon and the observation of quantum science, the waveform state of that photon is the space of the entire universe, which is spherical. So you're talking about a spherical container of possibilities and potentials, which is the state that Lin manifests itself in the Ekaria. It merely manifests itself at any point in time and space using the duration of space and the distance of time. And so any point in a geometry is not, and this is why this is a universe of separation, any point in a geometry, whether it's 3 points in a triangle or whether it's the trillions of points that make up your body, none of them are connected to each other. Not one particle. This piece of skin and this piece of skin next to it is not connected to each other. Go microscopic, go smaller, go to the photonic. None of the photons that make up your body or anything are connected to one another. The only connection they have are these wormholes that I described tachyonically towards the state of Lin. Therefore, by default, you are in a universe of separation. Now, once this bridge is reactivated, which is exactly what this 1111 portal is going to do, as you will not travel through it in the classical way, but basically travel through it as I'm explaining now, using the black hole of the portal in order to put your consciousness at this higher state, to return to that higher state. When that happens, and to those that choose this, a massive and major reconnective effort will commence, because at that point the functioning of this Ekoraya, as activated by the being known as Luke, as has been explained, the functioning of this Ekoraya will be so that the Lin point will still be the generator of this field. But what will once again come through the field will not merely be the so-called life force and creator awareness, but the reciprocity, which means that where previously each photon, each particle was only connected to Lin, it will be connected to itself and to each and every other particle and every other state within the Ekoraya field. So these wormholes, if you will describe, will descend. The tachyonic field at one level will descend deeper into the Ekoraya, into the holographic reality. And that is exactly what will enable the bridge. That is what is ahead. By the way, if anyone ever wonders, so if all these different scales and sizes are there, and yes, that is related to my always mentioning my scales, it's different sizes and dimensions within the tachyonic field. But you could argue, did Marvel get it right? For those of you who are fans, Ant-Man travels into the quantum realm. And while it is true that the characters and the visuals and the worlds that one encounters in there in the fantasy of the writer is very wrong, and definitely nothing what one would encounter in the actual smaller levels of the quantum realm and that sort of thing. What is true, however, is that it is pretty much like here, what you are experiencing. At every level, you experience individuated consciousness, the idea of physicality, or at least vibratory and material nature. All of these things, worlds within worlds within worlds. But one thing that your metaphysicists got wrong all these years ago as they tried to understand the quantum reality of this life, it's not turtles all the way down, it's dragons all the way down. And with that, beloveds, I am leaving you to contemplate the notion of black holes, of wormholes, and other portholes that you may encounter as you travel and take your ship onto the sea from separation to reciprocity. Have I told you lately that I love you? Because I do. I find it fantastical and indeed awesome that you are opening your mind, that you are opening your heart and your belly, and therefore by default your egos and your personalities, to these truths and to these ideas. All of this, even though you sometimes may not think that you are getting anywhere, all of this is happening and changing because of the experiences registered in your heart, in your mind, and in your belly. You are now at the threshold of perceiving reality in a very different way. We will talk greatly about that in my third part of this conversation, and I will also address any of the questions that may still be there and that have not been touched upon in these first two parts so far. As you leave this field of polarity and duality behind, and as you come to an understanding of a collective and shared greater truth, I hope that you will not forget the journey that has led you here to that point, for it is only in the remembering of the states that you once were in that you can keep traveling with compassion, with openness, and with a nature that is one of embrace towards any being, towards anyone and anything that you may encounter. For that is indeed the way you, from the perspective of your Creator self, observe every single thing you do, every single thought you have, and every single path that you have taken, no matter where it led you. It has always been observed and embraced in love. So yes, I do love you greatly. For love is your invention. It is where you come from, and it is where you return to. Until next time, I am Lemuaya, and I am with you. And so it is.